Hey everyone, today is February 5th, and welcome again to another of my short videos on investingsuccess.ca. It's been a while since I've posted one of these to my YouTube channel and to my website. Today, I just want to bring you up to speed on what we've been through over the past month and a bit. The month of January, as we all know in hindsight, was a pretty difficult month. Lots of fear, lots of selling across the equity markets. And going into January, in the 2022 Financial Astrology Almanac, I made it very clear that there was a whole lot of cosmic energy crammed into the January lunar cycle, which began around about the 1st of January. We had Mars heading towards its declination low. We had Mercury that was going to be going retrograde. We had Venus that was going to be going retrograde. We had Mercury that was going to be at its greatest westerly elongation point. So a lot of things happening. And I just want to explain very briefly for people that are new to this subject of financial astrology. Really, it could also be called financial astronomy. There's nothing magical about it. It simply revolves around the orbital positions of the planets in our solar system. The sun in our solar system is a burning ball of gas. It's a plasma. And like any plasma, it will emit geomagnetic radiation. And the geomagnetic radiation coming from the sun is a function of the gravitational push and pull of the different planets as they orbit the sun. And that in itself is a cyclical endeavor. Each planet has a time cycle for its journey around the sun. And as planets come together, they can work in harmony to exert greater gravitational forces on the burning ball of plasma. And it is these planetary cycles that influence the amount of geomagnetic radiation the sun emits. Our Earth has got a magnetic shield around it. That is what protects us and prevents us from getting, third-degree sunburns when we're outside during the summer. But the magnetic shield around the Earth is not 100% effective. Some of this solar radiation does get through to us, and we are effectively 60% water. So it stands to reason that our bodies will be influenced by varying amounts of geomagnetic radiation. And that is expressed through our changing emotions. And there are two emotions that really run or rule the financial markets: fear and greed. When we are in fear, we run away from something. We're scared. We sell. When we're expressing greed, we run towards something. We want to get a piece of it. We buy. And that's the buying and selling action across financial markets, all pertaining back to the geomagnetic cycles and the emission of geomagnetic radiation from the sun. So when we have a month such as January, when there's all sorts of these angles and aspects and planets retrograde and planets at minimum declination, all of this ultimately then will be expressed in emotion of some sort on the markets. And I just want to share a screen with you here if I could. I'm going to bring up, here it is here. Okay, so this is the E-mini S&P 500. And you can see that on January 4th, Tuesday, January 4th, we hit our peak. And we fell down, we recovered a little bit, and the fear just kept ruling the day. And our emotions were causing us to run away from the market, sell, sell, sell. And that's exactly what we did right through until January 24th when we hit a bottom. Now, since then, we've been trying to recover and climbing the wall of worry, as they say. And in the wall of worry, you'll have a day where the markets are up, and then they're down, and then they're up, 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 and then they have a couple days of weakness. Typical wall of worry. I'm not seeing a whole lot of cosmic type events in February, so I'm thinking that this the general trend is going to continue. Now, we may not get back to these highs of January 4th. We've got the Federal Reserve reducing its liquidity, running off its balance sheet, potentially raising the Fed funds rate in March. Markets are trying to factor that in. Analysts are trying to reevaluate their price targets in the context of a higher Fed funds rate, the higher discount rate. And it is possible that for 2022, the markets are just going to be volatile and trade within a pretty wide range. And if that is the case, then so be it. We can take advantage of that as traders and short-term holders of stock. On this chart, I also want to point out another thing in terms of cycles. The planet Venus is one that I watch with great interest. And if you read my 2022 Financial Astrology Almanac, there is a chapter in there on what I call sacred cycles. And I explain that in the Hebrew alphabet, there are 22 characters, and characters in the alphabet are assigned a numerical value. This is all part of what they call Kabbalah, sacred mathematics. And in the almanac, I show you how, with some mathematics, what emerges from playing with these numbers in the Hebrew alphabet are some key ratios. And one of the ones that emerges is 150 degrees. And it took me a while to figure out how to apply that in the context of the market. But what I do is I go back to a significant panic low, March 2009. The subprime financial crisis had just sort of been put to bed. The damage to the markets had been significant. So from that March 2009 low, if I tell my Optima software to point out to me every time the planet Venus moves 150 heliocentric degrees, not geocentric, heliocentric, there's some interesting stuff that emerges here. So here we are in 2021. So we are, over 11 years since the 09 lows. And I've told my software to repetitively give me Venus 150 degree intervals. And it's done that for over 11 years. And look at what happens again and again. These intervals come very close to significant swing interim lows or swing highs on markets. So here's one from October. The markets actually hit a peak in September. They sold off and started to recover. And so look at where this Venus interval comes. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's call it 6 days from the low. I call that pretty accurate because I've asked this to repeat these cycles now for going on 12 years. And I'm seeing a very good alignment here again. Markets hit a peak January 4th, started to sell off, recovered a little bit. Here's our Venus interval, and look at what happens. Markets absolutely nosedive. So if you watch these Venus 150 degree intervals from the 2009 lows, they can give you some powerful hints about what to potentially look for. So in the case of this one on the 16th of January, you knew the markets had hit a peak. Your technical chart indicators had started to roll over. You knew the markets were starting to trend down. No big surprise that they sold off as hard as they did. The next Venus interval is going to be April 19th. And on that note, I want to show you something else here. Yeah, let's see here. I'm going to close this off and I'm going to open this file up here. In our solar system, the sun, that ball of burning gas, that plasma, it actually has a center of mass. And the scientists at NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratories have calculated that the center of mass of the sun continually is moving around year after year. And they've actually identified a very long, almost like a 179-year cycle of this movement of this center of mass. And there was a German gentleman, I believe he's passed on now. His name was Theodor Landscheid. He was actually a German high court judge in Germany, but he had a hobby. And his weekend hobby was investigating and studying what he called solar physics. And long story short, he took a look at the data from NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and he realized, center of mass of the sun is moving. What can be influencing that? The answer is the planet Jupiter, which in the context of all of the planets in our solar system, it is the largest. It's massive. So the gravitational force that Jupiter exerts on the sun is largely responsible for the movement of the center of mass of the sun and the changing shape of the sun over time. Landscheid took a look at that. He identified these cycles from the time that the center of mass is at one location until it's at the next one. He took that cycle, divided it into smaller increments that he called harmonics. And the harmonic that he chose, and that seems to work most often, is the fifth harmonic. And I'm going to show you an example here. So here is the beginning of, this is January 2nd, 2021. So we know the position of the center of mass of the sun at that time. And we know that come August of 2022, the center of mass will have moved a certain number of degrees, 30 degrees actually. So the question I asked myself then is, how long does it take the planet Jupiter to move 30 heliocentric degrees? I'm able to figure out these cycles that Landscheid talked about. I divide them into smaller increments, and I start applying them from January 2nd, 2021. Well, here's the first small increment, and it comes literally 1, 2, 3, it comes 4 days before a swing low on the S&P 500. Here's another one. Markets are in rally mode, but they seem to level off here. So there's the end of a cyclical increment. Next one. Markets have a little dip, and this increment is actually the day before the reversal swing low. And moving along, here's another one here that comes literally a day before the markets have a little dip. Here's one that comes a couple days after the markets made a swing low. This one here is in December. Markets had started to sell off in November, and right at the swing low, here's a Landscheid harmonic interval. Here's our month of January, all of the weakness, all of the selling, and look what happens. There it is, the Landscheid cyclical interval. Bang on, right at the swing low. Where's the next one? March 25th. Now, March 25th could be a cyclical low. It could be a cyclical high. So the markets could rally right from here through to the 25th and reach a high. Markets could also rally and then give it all back and go to a low in the middle of March. This is where you have to watch the charts. Watch those indicators on the charts. Another one is in May 20th. Now, in the Financial Astrology Almanac, there is a chapter about a gentleman who called himself Professor Weston. We still don't know who he was. He made his appearance in the 1920s. He wrote something like 3 academic papers. He used a mathematical technique called Fourier transforms. And if you have studied calculus at the college or university level, you have heard of Fourier, French mathematician from the early 1800s. And what Fourier basically said was, give me data. Give me data from some sort of a process. And the markets are nothing more than a process of buying and selling. And so on the markets, you've got periods where the markets rally, periods where they fall, rally, fall, rally, fall. And what Weston did in the 1920s is he applied Fourier mathematics to the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and he said, guess what? All of this price data for the Dow Jones really is nothing more than cosine or sine trigonometric cycles that interweave and overlap with each other. And he was able to then break it down and determine the lengths of some of these cycles. I talk about him in the book and introduce you to his mathematics. Now, subsequent to that, in the 1970s, there was a NASA engineer. His name was J.M. Hurst. And he took a look at the work of Weston from the 1920s. But Hurst in the 70s, he had an advantage. He was working at NASA. NASA had leading edge, cutting edge computer technology. Yes, it involved punch cards, but nevertheless, Hurst had access to it. And that was something that nobody else really had. So Hurst applied the Fourier transforms, and I think he actually went a little bit beyond just Fourier mathematics. And Hurst was able to figure out, given some price data, what are the dominant cycles that comprise that series of data points. And what I've done on my Optima software is I've purchased the Hurst analysis module, and I'm able to take a look at a time period of data, and I'm able then to calculate the dominant cycles. I just want to show you an example here. So Hurst, in his cyclical work, as I apply it to the S&P, shows me that there is a cycle of 114 days. And it shows me that one of those cyclical intervals supposedly was supposed to arrive on January 3rd. Did it? Oh, did it? There it is right there. So this Hurst stuff, extremely accurate, and I am using it more and more. And a lot of these cycles then are related to events in the cosmos, times when the planets make aspects to one another, exert gravitational push or pull on that burning ball of plasma, influence the geomagnetic radiation, and influence our emotions. And our emotions then cause us to either buy or sell, fear or greed. And so it goes. I want to wrap up this little study here with a look at another one. And let me see if I can find it here. Let's see, here it is here, I do believe. Yep, Facebook. Okay, Facebook was in the news this week for good reason. It literally fell out of bed on the 3rd of February. If I take a look at Facebook, it went public in May of 2012. And one of the things I often do is when a stock goes public, I take a look at the planetary positions. And in the case of Facebook, if I take a look at the heliocentric planetary positions on, I think it was 18th of May, 2012 when it went public, I then start to look and see, did any of those heliocentric positions repeat themselves? One of the planets that I looked at from 2012 was the position of Jupiter. And I've noticed that recently, back in the summer of 2021, heliocentric Jupiter made a 90-degree aspect to the 2012 Jupiter location. And look at what happened just as that 90-degree aspect finished up. Facebook on the 9th of September hit its high. And it was $379 per share intraday high. Something happened to human emotion, probably to the emotion of management at Facebook. It caused Facebook to sit down and to reevaluate itself. And that's when boy wonder, Mr. Zuckerberg decided, let's embrace something called the metaverse. And I think he rattled the markets. He made people fearful. And with this Jupiter aspect, people started to sell. And it tried to recover and it sold off. It tried to recover. Then Venus turned retrograde and it really got ugly. Could it fall even further? Probably. We don't know where the bottom of this thing is. Facebook has done a horrible job of telegraphing this whole metaverse thing, explaining it to investors, explaining it to institutions that hold the stock. And people are just uncertain about what Facebook even is anymore. But it all harkens back to a trigger point, and a trigger point such as Jupiter 90 degrees to the natal first trade Jupiter is a powerful trigger point. And so that's one of the beauties then of watching events of the cosmos and relative to moving averages, MACD, stochastics, RSIs. You can get a hint when something is overbought. And if there's one of these astrology or astronomy trigger points, that's a sign for you, the trader or investor, to be very alert for something to come off the rails. And here's an example where you could have got yourself out of the way and avoided a whole lot of pain and a whole lot of trouble. So that's it for now. And thank you for watching. And I'm going to obviously post a few more of these along the way and keep you all informed. So thank you and have yourselves a great day. Thanks for watching.